Now, also, James, what about this today, where apparently emergency services is a state responsibility? Apparently, we should not overuse the ADF in these areas, despite the fact that's exactly what Labor said and was one of the many reasons they were able to bash their way over the previous government. It's the way they were able to win. Good luck to them. But guess what? It was bullshit then, and it's bullshit now.
Well, your words, not mine, but yes, indeed. And I mean, I just think that with all of...
I know it's early in Perth, but still.
But nevertheless, I think that just with all of this ADF review thing, too, more broadly, we need to be a bit cynical about what they're trying to accomplish here with this. I would love it if they would stop reviewing stuff and start actually doing stuff. It's not just about the emergency services, it's about the whole thing. They're just taking basically what the Morrison government said they were going to do and then said, now we're going to rebrand this the Labour plan, but they haven't moved the ball anywhere further on actually, advancing our defence. Because remember, the job is not emergencies, it's killing people, killing the enemy.
Well, and we're about to buy, $19 billion worth of missiles, which I'm pretty sure are not about fighting climate change. But again, Steve, what I find interesting here, right, one of the reasons that there was a change of government and why Albo is so confident upon permanent rule is 1.2 million Australians of Chinese descent. They moved away because of the bellicose language, apparently, about China. Yet, it's Albo who's doubled down and is spending $300 billion on submarines. Today, we're told we're not fit for purpose against a potential war against China. So is this yet another one of the house of lies that they were able to trade on to be able to get into office, where they're not really doing anything different than the previous government? They've just packaged it differently.
Of course it was and is. And you showed those grabs of Anthony Albanese pre the election, talking about how the Defence Force has been used too many times in these natural disasters. Well, if you're sitting on a tin roof, up in Lismore with your small children and your dog, and there's no one else who can come and get you because the local SES, as we remember, didn't have enough boats in the area to actually rescue people because the state government hadn't put in the resources they should have. You don't care where they come from, whether they're the Defence Force or not. And so at that time, I think we were all pretty supportive of the fact that Scott Morrison and his cabinet got the resources there very quickly and saved a lot of people's lives. The other thing that fascinates me about this report, it talks about how we've got to stop, spending money on tanks and land equipment, and all the money's now going to go into submarines and missiles and stuff that we can tell the Chinese we've got, which we hope we never have to use. What have all the highly paid generals been doing for the last 20 and 30 years who haven't said this themselves? Why do you need Stephen Smith and Angus Houston, who, by the way, used to be in charge of the Defence Force? How come they've suddenly worked this out in the last 5 minutes?
But also, it's this thing where, look, I think there's something a little more, again, deeply political about all of this stuff, right? Which is, when they constantly talk about, the finances were so terrible, it's about trying to rob one side of politics of having the historic advantage on economic management. Now, when it comes to defence, the side you trusted. When it comes to national defence, it's been a basket case the whole time. Matt, that's what I feel. But also, I love the idea that we're going to have to cut back on the types of vehicles that we are sending to Ukraine.
Yeah, I was going to make that point, Paul. These armoured vehicles, which we're cutting, keep in mind the cuts are from an expected number of 450 armoured infantry vehicles down to now only 129 based on this decision. Well, these are the exact vehicles that the Ukrainians have been asking for, promoting and saying how great the Bushmasters are fighting the Russians. So why would we be taking one of the most effective pieces of military equipment in this war and reducing its number here in Australia? That hasn't been explained by the government. And look, I'm all ears. I don't pretend to have all the answers on our defence procurement needs, but I think releasing this review on the eve of Anzac Day is a particularly poor form of political management. They're clearly trying to hide these cuts to the armoured division under the otherwise unifying messages of Anzac Day. And I think it's terrible to abuse or to try and use Anzac Day for political purposes like this. This should have been put out later this week, if need be, ahead of the budget, so we could have a proper and fulsome discussion about this. But I'm sure Andrew Hastie and the Coalition will be taking this up with more vigour once Anzac Day is out of the way.